Page 72, Tuesday, 28th of October, 1975, 1609. Fourth recommendation. Behold, human being of the earth, the next following recommendation is clothed in the value of the not-to-be-broken bond, and it is explained to you with these words, which then are the determination of the creation. You shall not be breaking the bond with the creation. Purely and modestly you shall live in the bond with the creation, so you become always more similar to it. Everything spiritual given to you within this recommendation, you only find through the following of this recommendation. Behold, human being, now as an intellect-based mature form, you may, in spiritual or consciousness-based respect, see the consequences which adhere to you out of the non-following of this recommendation in uncountable forms, until your last hour of life, and cause you terrifying hours of the change from this side to the other side. These are the consequences of the breaking of the bond with the creation, through which you have left aside the following of the recommendations. Therefore you shall not be breaking the bond with the creation. This bond with it, however, is a bond of the marriage, so it also means you shall not commit adultery. This bond of marriage, however, means to you that you live as one with the creation. That is to say, that two powers are working within one another, and thereby are one in all their activities, doings, transforming, and deeds. This means marriage in true value. However, if you do not strive to keep to this recommendation-based bond with the creation, which is to you the second and at the same time the first power, then you will be adulterous, and your desire within you for the creation, its love, its knowledge, its truth, and wisdom dwindles away uncontrollably. A small shadow, and be it still so unrecognizable for you, embodies, in the non-following of a tiniest of a given recommendation, a sign of the unchasteness that must be eliminated from you for all times. In all of nature, the unending love of the creation reveals itself to you in order to be a visible and recognizable way for you, whose following leads to the recognition and compliance with the given recommendations. In all things, the creation sets an example of its purity here, in the nature visible to you, in order to manifest to you in which form you have to follow the recommendations. Never and never has the creation itself contravened any of its own recommendations, even though it also needs the further relative absolute fulfillment, and just as each and all was and is exposed to temptations, and so and on and on. Also it, the creation, often and often lay immersed in profound pain as it was created by the creation and was set on its own. Also, the way of its own evolution was given to it in order to evolve itself in its inner life sense. However, the recommendation of the marriage bond, which was inherent in it to the creation, awakened within it the power of the following in order to preserve itself in fulfillment of this recommendation. Human being of the earth, hence you as well fulfill the recommendation given to you always, again and again, and consider that the creation also has to achieve the following of the same recommendations, through which it solely is able to enliven its existence towards the true existence. Hence, you recognize that all laws and recommendations, all uniformly and all universally, equally have their validity, in the small as in the great, without distinction in the kind of life form. So you, as a human being, have to live by distinct laws and recommendations of the creation in the small, so the creation also has to live by the same recommendations of the creation in the great. Behold, through this you will be conscious that the creation never and never demands anything from you that is also not incumbent upon it, and which is not incumbent upon it in a self-determination based manner. For this reason, it has made its determinations into venerable or controlling recommendations, so they, through this form, become understandable to its creations, and thus they show them the way to the evolution. And solely through the following of these recommendations, you obtain the spiritual life power through which you already nip every temptation in the bud. Yet what is a temptation for you, human being of the earth? But truly nothing other than a spiritual or consciousness-based, impenetrable darkness approaching you, which you, through your unintellect, thereby call into life and develop into an evil might, by you spiritlessly devoting yourself solely to material and worldly values, joys, vices, and hardships in multiple forms. And this spiritual or consciousness-based impenetrable darkness lives and reigns within you for so long until even the smallest, and to you, seemingly most unimportant part belonging to it is removed from you. For this reason, the creation itself gives to you the determinations of the laws and recommendations which, once you become heedful, are able to recognize in the nature, thus you allow them to become your boon. Behold, just as the creation itself has subordinated and aligned itself to these laws and recommendations, so you must also do this in all truliness. Therefore also heed in recognition and following of this recommendation, you shall not commit adultery. This is a love exhortation given to you, which shall allow you to recognize that you must not live for your transitory body and the transitory world alone, but rather, in first and last power, for that level which the creation itself is, where the all great, timely, and lasting union in the absolutely full development takes place. Therefore rejoice in your senses that you, through the all-timely endless love of the creation, through us, by way of me, and through your prophet of the truth, receive the word of the explanation, and the word of the instruction of the values of the recommendations of the 10, through which you, again and again, are able to recognize that the creation, in the existence of all great times, reveals its all-exhilarating love to all its creations, often and often anew, in a variety of ways, thus also through us and your prophet. For this reason, consider the love of the creation at all times, so that your thoughts directed towards it become a protective wall for you, which lastingly shuts you off from all that which often and often encourages you to act in the infringement and contempt of these recommendations given to you, in finely laid out, well thought out, and in bold temptations. Therefore be thankful, whilst reminding yourself continuously about the creation and its love. Thereby, in your greatest anxiety, and also in a forlornness, you will never and never fall prey to the spiritual or consciousness-based impenetrable darkness, because through the consciousness given to you that the creation is connected to you in an all great timely manner, you will obtain strengthening, which also enables you of renunciation of all that which belongs to the transitoriness. Thus, with conciliatory senses, and without grumbling, you will also be amicably disposed towards all adversities, all sufferings and afflictions, privations and hardships, and all antagonists, even if you must go against them with harsh words. In this knowledge, you will never and never create feelings of hatred within you. However, you will not be able to avoid expressing yourself in very harsh words if you want to apply yourself to the truth, so you, as a human being of the earth, must speak a very harsh language of the truth if you want to make yourself comprehensible. However, this applies to you as well as to the ones next to you. You still require this harsh language, because only in your very distant future will it become subject to a change of the leveling out and the gentleness. Then, when you, human being of the earth, have found the state of the recognition and acknowledgement of the truth. However, you are still not ready, and require a harsh language for the instruction of the truth, so that through it you may finally understand and recognize the values of the recommendations of the 10 and their following. Behold, human being of the earth, if you consider all of this, so must your senses swell up in wistfulness for the truth and proceed into the truth itself. The love for the truth will transform itself within you into a desire for the creation, and then you will do nothing more other than to only love the creation in fulfillment of its laws and recommendations. Thus you will never be adulterous again. Behold, this alone is also the only right approach. Realize this, so that at any dangerous hour, at any moment where you are exposed to temptations, you yourself are able to integrate yourself into the love desire for the creation. Hence, you know the means which protect you from any downfall, whereby the creation in turn reveals its love to you. For that, it desires nothing more from you than that you recognize its true love, that you also always be conscious of it, and likewise develop it within you as the greatest power. So if you follow this desire, so you also live according to the recommendation of the bond and the value of the non-breaking of the marriage with the creation. An oppressive problem weighs upon you, human being of the earth, in regard to this recommendation which is handed down to you in false interpretation and explanation. Since time immemorial, it is said to you, quote, "You shall not commit adultery," which then, however, means in truth, you shall not be breaking the bond with the creation. However, through human volition, the easily comprehensible recommendation word was falsified into a human form, through which the deep sense of the truth of the recommendation was lost. Through the form, quote, "You shall not commit adultery," a purely human recommendation of the customs and morals was consequently characterized, which led to delusions, confusions, murder, and false law applications of human making. Hatred, jealousy, and egoism resulted from this as inevitable consequences. Therefore, how can a recommendation thus drawn up by human beings be of rightness, when negative Ausartungen ensue from it? However, as such, a human and inadequate recommendation is now given to you without it being sufficiently explained to you, although you quite evidently require a precise elucidation. You shall thus be instructed by us in an accurate explanation from out of our level. According to the estimation of the human beings of the earth, a life form commits adultery in the case when two have joined themselves together in a lifelong bond, male and female, whom you call husband and wife, in such a bond which you call marriage. You have established this designation, a human alteration of the meaning of the bond, in forms drawn up by you, without ever having grasped the sense as it was explained to you in preceding words. Truly, if you cite the recommendation, quote, "You shall not commit adultery," also in your terms, human being of the earth, namely, when you have entered a bond between husband and wife, a marriage, according to your sense, then the recommendation is likewise valid for you on a small scale, as well as in the connection with the creation. When the one part, husband or wife, departs from the other and goes away, leaving him or her, then he or she disregards the recommendation and breaks it. This means that the bond entered into is broken. It results in an adultery, because the departing of one from the other, in dissolution of the bond, means that this is broken, and consequently the recommendation is disregarded. However, a contempt and a breaking of the recommendation also occurs when the one part exempts him or herself from the instruction of the recommendation, regardless if he or she continues living together with the other part. The recommendation is broken, therefore, because the cooperation of the two parts is destroyed. However, adultery is also caused, through that form, if the recommendation is thus broken and disregarded by one or both parts, that they connect in consensual form with outsiders who are not involved in the bond or the marriage, which is equivalent to a violation against the first recommendation in the human value, or you shall have no other mites, gods, tin gods, etc., next to the creation. A special form herein refers to the act of procreation, intrinsic to all material life forms, which you call bodily love or the sexual act. In these concerns, you, human being of the earth, are very unbridled and unnatural. Sexually, you engage yourself more extensively than the necessity requires. Through your uncontrolledness, you are excessive and unrestrained, through which many of you often are breaking the recommendation of the bond and connect yourself outside of marriage and alongside marriage in sexual form with further partners, through which clearly and with good clarity the contempt of the recommendation finds its completion. The recommendations and laws of the creation determine this unequivocally and without doubt. However, a very strict recommendation of the creation establishes this recommendation with the demarcation in the evolution of the spirit. Never and never will the value of the recommendation then be compromised, disregarded, or broken, if the act, within and relationship outside of marriage, and a relationship alongside marriage, in universal, honest love, serves towards the evolution of the spirit and thereby the fulfillment of the given recommendation itself and all further recommendations and laws. This, however, excludes all those concerns and furtherances which arrange themselves within Ausartungen of the lust, the desire, the vice, and the addiction. The procreative act is depicted in the spiritual as plus, plus, plus. These three plus signs mean 1. Plus. Unbreakable bond in the great and in the small. 2. Plus. Preservation of the species in the procreation and through it. 3. Plus. Assistance through the act toward the evolution commitment and liberation of the spiritual or consciousness-based impenetrable darkness. Therefore, if this recommendation is followed according to these three values, then a breaking of the bond never and never occurs, not even then if two parts, male and female, have joined together in a marriage bond. And this is fair and good before the creation. The same values apply for you, human being of the earth. Wednesday, 29th of October, 1975, 13:02. The creation also gives you, human being of the earth, the necessary celestial bread. So heed that what I, out of the we, have to instruct you about this. So your desire to keep yourself pure finds fulfillment. For this reason, however, the values of the recommendations of the 10 are also given to you as a whole, because through creational resolution, everything is contained in them for you, which applies to you in determination. Therefore, now act only accordingly to what is given to you through the explanations and instructions of the values of the recommendations of the 10. Thus, the growth of the spiritual or consciousness-based cognition will make itself recognizable within you in the form of the desire for love. But now, a further recommendation shall be explained to you, the 5th, which you know as, you shall honor and esteem and love your father and mother, which then, however, means in truth,